Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new camp build. We are in the Ash Heap today, working on a little build that is centered around the Wildwood Den. And this has been in my mind for a little while, so really happy to do this one. So let's jump into it. Okay. Yeah, I was a little concerned during this build that it might not work out, but in the end we've come up with something that is nice, scrappy, really blends quite well into the Ash Heap, and I'm really pleased with it. So let's have a little look at where we are on the map first off. Here we go. As you see, down in the Ash Heap, there's my little Wildwood Den camp. We are right next to abandoned mine site Kittery there. It's the easiest place to find it from. Belching Betty's not far away, as is the Rusty Pick just here. So northern side of the Ash Heap this time, with Charleston all the way over there. It's a good little spot, this. There's a nice bit of flat ground, and there's kind of track running through it that is quite cool as well. So, let's get cracking. Here we go, Wildwood Den. This is going to be the core piece, and it caused a few issues. The collision box, particularly on the top, is a little bit larger than I would have liked, but we managed to work with it. So first up, I want this to sit reasonably low on the ground, or as low as I can get it, really, which has worked out quite well here. It's sitting quite low because the ground's flat. And I want a bit of space around it, because we're going to add some extra bits and pieces both during the building phase and during the decoration phase. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So, heading around the back, we're going to start the structure that's going to wrap around the Wildwood Den here. And yeah, this thing's a bit awkward. What we're doing here is trying to line this foundation up so it's parallel with the back of the Wildwood Den here, and that the edge of it here, the right-hand edge of the foundation, is lined up perfectly with the centre of the den. You can see there's a window bar right in the middle there. Actually, this ended up being ever so slightly off to the right as we look at it from here. You can't really tell, but it's technically a tiny little bit over to the right, and that did cause a couple of issues later on, but we'll get to that in a moment. Wasn't a serious problem. So the hardest part about this, at least initially, is the fact that, as I said, that collision box on top is way too large. And we can't get these floors to sit anywhere close to the roof, or nowhere near as close as I would like. So that did have me worried that this might not work at all, but in the end I came up with a workaround that is actually really quite cool, so quite happy with the result. We're going to have to bump that foundation up as high as we can, just sort of figuring out the height here. So get that in there, and still a little bit on the low side here. Apparently, despite the size of that gap. Unfortunately, this foundation is now as high as it will go in this position, so we're going to have to sort of work around that a little bit. Unfortunately, that one's not going any higher either. So we'll snap that back in. We'll chuck this on this end, where we've actually got a little bit of room to lift it up a tiny little bit higher. There we go. Bit crazy high across the back there, but it is what it is. Fortunately, when we find the floor pieces, this now means it's going to actually work. Here we go, get that snapped in. So you can see it's now going across the top of the Wildwood Den, and is quite happy to do that, but for the gap. So we're going to start off from this foundation now that we know where we need to be. Snap these ones on the back into place. There we go, nice. Now we're going to need to work out how we're going to get up here. Can't take that foundation out on the end, not that I really want to, but I can't because it's the only thing supporting the other two at this point. One drawback, as you may have noticed, I cannot snap this access onto the edge of that foundation, and it's just because the Wildwood Den is just a tiny little bit bigger than two foundations, so we're going to have to do some freehand work here. Looks like those stairs will snap on okay, so we should be able to get some access to the upper level, which is kind of important for this build. We'll carefully place this foundation in manually. We want it to be as accurately parallel to the Wildwood Den again as we can. And we have to kind of figure out how to adjust this by adjusting where we're standing and how we're looking at the foundation, because we're right up against it here and it's a bit temperamental. It's kind of a theme for this build. So if you're struggling, just change how you're looking at the thing, and you'll often get it to play ball when you look at it from a slightly different position. So we'll nudge it over right up against the foundation on the right there. That's about where I want it. Now we can lift it up. Now I will want to snap onto the front of this. Actually, I'll be taking it off again later, but you do need to carefully make sure you've got that foundation in the right place for that. Unfortunately, that one set of stairs that I want to use won't actually snap in, but we'll have a workaround for that as well in a moment. So as we can see, we can't snap onto the front of this just yet. So tiny little bit of adjustment so it's a bit further away from the Wildwood Den, and we can now snap that extra foundation on the front. Unfortunately, this one won't snap back in, so that does kind of limit the options in terms of the stairs, but there is a good workaround for that. So I'll let that go back. I don't want to use the concrete stairs. I'd rather use wooden ones. And although the basic ones, these ones, won't actually fit, the ones from the Haunted House and the Contemporary set will snap in through the foundation there. So we'll go with the Haunted House ones as they work just fine, and they actually look quite cool. So heading back around to the side, extra foundation on the end there so we can stick out beyond the end of the Wildwood Den. We're having the same issue with the Wildwood Den being a little too large, so we'll do the same thing again and freehand in some foundations here. Again, we'll stick the Haunted House foundation stairs on there because they look, well, they blend in better and they look good. So there we go. Now we can access the back just nicely. So staircase on here. Going to use this one with a frame. It kind of fits with the back of the Wildwood Den and I like the look of it. We're going for a scrappy, not exactly industrial, but sort of kind of scrappy industrial vibe here. It's kind of fitting with the Ash Heap and that staircase works for that. So let's get these floors snapped on the top. I want these to extend out over the Wildwood Den, but I don't want them going all the way to the front. I do want the Wildwood Den sticking out a bit at the front. Kind of make this thing look like it's built up and around it. So with those floors in, we'll get some walls in. And I'm using the very basic wooden walls here, the ones you start out with, just because they work with the scrappy look, and they fit in with the colour scheme of the Ash Heap as well. So I can't get a wall on the side here without taking the stairs off, and when I do, the stairs won't go back in. So this area is going to have to be an outside section. And we'll stick a doorway in across the top of the stairs. It works in the end. So there we go. And as you can see, I also can't snap walls on to this edge of the foundations either. I should be able to, but the Wildwood Den, I think, again, is just getting in the way there. Just because we're so close up to it. Technically, you could be a little further back if you wanted, but that would require me pulling everything down again and starting over, and that's a nope, I think. So we'll flip those floors around, put the last couple in. And we've got the basic upper floor plan in place. We'll have to put some supports in a bit. We'll get some walls in here. I'm going to pull those front two off now, just because I've decided I want to change up the shape a little bit. So, as I like doing, we'll use some half walls and stick some angled roofs on the top. And then, comparable to last week's build, we'll have a higher section of roof at the back. Let's find these angled pieces, the arches. There we go. 1 and 2. And we'll get the roof on a little higher up and at a bit of a angle there, so it looks a bit more interesting. And then we'll use these slanted wooden walls just to plug the gap. Eventually. There we go. Nice. So that's the core structure. We kind of see where we're going now. Stick some railings on this front edge. Make the thing look a little more complete and stop me falling off. And we hit our next little snag. Of course we do. And that is that I want a couple of doorways here to close these gaps, and unfortunately they won't snap for some weird reason. I have no idea why, it's just helpful like that. So what we're going to do here is pull the staircase out. To do that, we're going to need an extra foundation on the end. Stick a staircase here to make sure those floors up top are still supported once we take this centre one out. A few issues there. This time it's that the floors are not actually supported yet. So we'll stick one there. Still need one more in on the other side. There we go. Great. Still can't move that over because it's helpful again. So we'll close that up, and that should allow us to get doorways in. Except that they're still being awkward. It won't snap in the way around I want it, and I have absolutely no idea why. I tried messing around with various bits to make that work, and it just wouldn't do it. I'm guessing, again, the Wildwood Den has something to do with this, but as to exactly what, I'm not sure. Because I still can't put them in the right way around down here. It's one of those builds. Fortunately, we're going scrappy with this build, so it kind of doesn't matter that it will snap in the wrong way round. So, if it works, we'll just go with it, I guess. As I say, scrappy build, so having it back to front is not the end of the world. But we've got those in, so now we can put the stairs back in and go back to where we were before. So there we go. All the walls back in, and we now have the thing properly supported with doors in place. So we're going to close up these gaps under the platform at the front there and provide a bit of extra support. So we'll put a half floor there on at a bit of an angle so I can snap a post onto the corner. And this is where the slight off-center position of the build kind of kicks in that I mentioned at the start. I can't get that lower post to snap in on that side. On the other hand, when we come around to this side, they actually will snap in, sort of. If I use the little ones, well, using the large ones we see, it's not going to play ball, but I can snap 3 of the little ones through, and they'll go straight through the Wildwood Den just fine. However, when we come back over to this side again, it doesn't work. And I think it's just because it's ever so slightly further over than it should be. Tiny little bit off-centre. But I can kind of live with it not reaching all the way down. It looks more or less supported there, if you don't look at it too closely. So we'll make do with that rather than starting over, for the sake of a couple of pixels. So those walls that I couldn't snap in on the inside here were causing plenty of issues. I tried different things to try and close this internal gap up with. The only thing that worked was the chain link fences. This came with the Haunted House set back around Halloween. And they're absolutely brilliant, these things, and I adore them. They're wonderful for scrappy builds. So these are cooperating okay. So we're going to use those to close it off. It creates a kind of feeling of being inside quite effectively. It matches more or less with the colour of the wood and with the general colour scheme of the Ash Heap and the Scrappy build as well. So I'm kind of happy with how that came out. Coming around to the outside here, I was absolutely astounded to find they'll sit just here fine. And they fit perfectly and close up the gap, so I'm going to go with that. You do need to make sure that the thicker post on the one end there is properly supported by those kind of roofs over the windows. So that's a bit of fiddling required, but they go in just fine. They close the gap and they make the whole thing look scrappy but complete. And this came as a total surprise to me that this worked as well as it did, but seeing as it does, I'm going to go with it because it looks quite cool. So we'll carefully manoeuvre that way in. Nice. It's getting a little dark. We'll sort that in a moment. Looks good. We'll head around to the other side and just repeat the procedure. So we'll carefully position that in. There we go. Nice. That worked really quite surprisingly well. So on this front edge, a little bit more difficult because we've got the curve to work with there. But the half-size ones, as it turned out, cooperated surprisingly well. So we'll hop up top. I'll turn on the snapping again, so I did have it off for those previous 2, and it's going to work. So there we go, up there, snapping back on, and there you go. Obviously it's going to clip through the inside a bit, but we're going to make that into a feature rather than a bug, and we'll kind of work with it in the decoration phase. And we end up with a slightly more closed off front to the build than I was expecting to pull off, so that's quite nice. So the last thing I'm going to do on the building before I head off and decorate is drop a couple of junk fences in around the sides here just to cover up the edge of these foundations, because as I've mentioned before, I don't really like them being that high up and visible. A couple of junk fences will blend this nicely. Those metal ones actually clip through quite nicely like that. It's a trick No Respawns uses it quite a lot. The wooden one's not quite so cooperative, but nonetheless it dresses it up nicely. So that's the core structure put together. So let's head off, decorate, and we'll have a look at the tour. Okay then, tour time. So, as you can see, I have done quite a lot in the decoration phase. I could have shown this, but the video would have been about twice the length if I did that, so I figured we'll skip over that. I will link in the top right corner and down in the description as well a previous video I did that uses a similar principle for these junk walls. These ones in this build are actually even easier to get in than that one. They really played ball, so if you have a look at that video you'll be able to see what I did, as it's basically similar. You'll also see a little shop in a second that is the same as the one I built in that previous video, so if you want to see how I did that, again, check that video out. I'll link it in the corner and down below. Let's head on inside. We've got a decent little fortified Ash Heap Wildwood Den home going on here, and I'm really pleased with the results. So fenced off this little area here with some barbed wire, and we have ourselves a nice little farm on the edge there. Loads and loads of little bits of decoration around just to dress it up, make it look a little more lived in and complete. Added the brambles around strategically to make it look like the thing's been here for a little while and some of the wildlife started to grow back. One in the centre needs to come out, but I'll sort that some other time. Yeah, really like this. Nice scrappy but fairly solid looking structure in the middle there. And reasonably well fortified for when the Ash Heap's denizens decide to come and pay a call. We've got a little trading post shop here. It's just a single foundation with an angled roof on a half wall at the back, a couple of posts to support it. As I say, check out that video I've linked because it will show you exactly how I did this. Dead simple, nice little cozy spot A couple of bits of decoration in the back there. Mannequin in the Blue Ridge outfit just to man the store there. And nice and effective way to do the player vending. I'll have a little look more at that windmill in just a minute, but before we do that, let's take a little look at how I've decorated the Wildwood Den. That bush in the middle really needs to go there. I'll stick some confetti down later. So here we go. As you can see, I put a couple of half chain link fences inside just to kind of divide off that front section and work with the bit that clips through. So, little bedroom in the corner. The previous build I did, had quite the different layout for the Wildwood Den, so I wanted to mix it up a bit and try to not just duplicate that. But we've got a little seating area here, with a couple of terminals in there just for the fun, to mix things up a bit. A little bar area, might listen to the radio. We've got a nice little selection of sort of alcohol-based decoration items now, so it's kind of fun to do stuff like that. We've got a little bed in there for Yasmin as well, and a little space out front divided off by the chain link, which I think looks alright. I used Yasmin here because her ally station, that little cooker there, actually works as a cooking station, whereas the other cooking stations we have available just weren't really cooperating with that little space that I wanted to put them in. So I switched over to that and it works. I actually had to lock up the Wildwood Den because she kept opening my front gates and leaving them wide open, which was driving me bananas, so I've locked her in. That works quite well. So we'll head up around the structure at the back now. A little bit of decoration out here just to dress it up. We have a little peek through the windows from here. Looks alright. A little look over the farm as well. I dropped the Collectron into the farm as well there. It went quite nicely up against the junk fence there at the back, tucked in alright. For some reason the Collectron still wanders around the outside of the walls, but apparently he wants to be contrary like that. So I've gone for a very, very scrappy look on the wooden structure here, and I kind of like it. Blends in with the ash heap and looks quite cool. I didn't really know how to decorate this section, as it's kind of dead space. It's basically a stairwell. So I put a few bits and pieces in here, used the ammo crafting machine as well at the back there. A few little bits of decoration as well. Quite happy with it. I couldn't really go to town on this because we're very, very close to the build limit on this by the time I'd finished. But it's come out alright. It's probably not such a bad thing, as the parting's a little bit easier if I don't over-decorate. That scrappy look is why I didn't go for wallpaper in here as well, just because it kind of keeps that scrappy thrown together vibe. There's a couple of things up top here that I'm really happy with how they came out. So we've got our chemistry station just sat on the balcony up there. Decided to use barbed wire to mix up the textures a bit. Use the curtains because they fit in and don't take up too much room. We'll head around the back of the stairs here. You can see I wrapped that in the chain link as well so we don't fall down the stairs. In this particular build, that looks quite cool, I think. I'm quite pleased that that works. This is a bit of a problem putting railings around that stairway rather. So we've got a little crafting area out here for the brewing stuff, which sort of dressed up quite nicely. It'll just about fit through here. The curtains work well for this doorway because they don't get in the way so much, so that's quite cool. Nice little arch going on here. We'll do like that look. We'll have a look at the main part of the crafting area. So, kept the decoration relatively simple out here. Set a few bits and pieces on the wall, a couple of stash boxes, some 50 cal machine guns on display as well. And we've got a reasonably open, easy to pass through crafting area that has everything we need, with a few little bits of extra decoration too. So, happy with how that came out. As I say, I'm particularly pleased with the chain link fences around the stairs here. They make it feel kind of narrow, but that staircase is fairly narrow anyway, so it kind of works. I like it. Nice and scrappy. And as I say, I'm not going to keep falling down the stairs. Always a win. Let's head back on outside and have a look at the other end of the camp. Whole bundle of decoration here. The ground was a little awkward for placing things, but we managed to kind of draw the eye away from that, which is alright. There's our chain link underneath the upper level there, looking pretty awesome. A few stash boxes and other bits. Got a shower around here. Turns out Yasmin uses that on occasion, or she would if I hadn't locked her in anyway. Little toilet there. So I've got a windmill here for my main generator, because it blends in. Basically what I did with that was just put it on a single foundation. So I had to snap some extra foundations around that in order to get the windmill to place. But once it was in, I can pull the spare ones off. Put a couple of ordinary wooden railings around the foundation and then dress it up with junk fences as well. So there we go, a few extra bits and pieces around just to dress up this end as well. Quite happy with how that looks. A few stash boxes, a few garden bits. I really need to get rid of that bloody shrub in the middle. Drives me nuts, that one. But yeah, I'll have to do that on my own time. But there we go. One very, very cool, if I do say so myself, little fortified homestead in the Ash Heap using the Wildwood Den. Really pleased with how that came out. So I do hope you folks enjoyed that video. If you did, please do consider dropping me subs and likes. I very, very much appreciate it. Down below the video, as usual, you can find channel memberships, social media links, and the merch store as well. If you want to support the channel that way, I really appreciate it. It really helps out. Do take a look at the recent Starfield videos I've been doing as well, because I'm really hyped for that game, and if you want to catch up with what's going on, there's an opportunity to do that. And if you get a chance to join us for the live streams as well, we're of course playing 76, and we're playing Mass Effect 3 as well, getting a little sci-fi fix ahead of Starfield, so I do hope you'll join us for those. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.